The movie starts with a young girl named Wei drawing a corpse flower, a rare plant her scientist father is studying. Her father, who is working on skin grafting to fix his own face, promises that one day he will fix hers too. Later, he tries an experimental skin graft on himself, but it goes horribly wrong. The new skin seals his mouth shut and he suffocates. Little Wei tries to save him, but she's too late. Years pass, and Wei is now a young woman. She gets a scholarship to a university in New Zealand and moves in with her aunt, Ling. Ling's husband left her, and she is struggling financially, which has stalled her house renovations. She hopes her new beauty care business will help. When Wei arrives, she meets Ling's neighbor, Cheryl, who is a gardener, and her cousin, Angela, who has a little dog named Vicky. Ling immediately points out Wei's birthmark and gives her a concealer to hide it. She also praises Wei's fluency in English and Chinese, telling Angela to learn from her, which makes Angela annoyed. That night, Angela is overheard on the phone, begging her father to come get her. The next morning, Wei honors her late father by burning incense at a small altar before heading to her first day of university. On campus, she gets directions from a friendly homeless man named John. In her lecture, Wei impresses her professor, Paul, by getting a perfect score on a quiz. Paul announces that he's looking for a lab assistant. After class, Wei goes to the lab, looking through her father's diary. Paul finds her there, and she explains that her father was also a scientist working on a skin grafting experiment. Paul is intrigued and offers her the lab assistant position, expressing his interest in helping with her father's research. Meanwhile, back at Ling's house, Angela and her friends Jasmine and Eve sneak into Wei's room. They find the walls covered with pictures of insects and a drawer filled with surgical tools stained with dried blood. When Wei comes home, the girls are startled. They sit down to watch a horror movie, but they are unnerved by Wei's unsettling manner as she eats a bowl of noodles. The friends quickly make excuses to leave. The next day, Wei invites the trio to a restaurant to eat her late father's favorite dish, charu, which she plans to put on his altar. Touched by her story, Jasmine and Eve agree to join her. Elsewhere, Paul receives an email from the research board threatening to cut his funding if he doesn't make a groundbreaking discovery soon. When Wei eats messily, Angela and Eve become disgusted and leave. Jasmine, feeling guilty, makes an excuse and leaves as well, leaving Wei alone. On her way home, Wei finds John, the homeless man, and gives him a small parcel. She confides in him about her birthmark, which she calls a scar, and says she feels ugly. John tells her she isn't ugly, but that the world is. Wei promises to find a way to make them both beautiful, but John tells her she already is. Suddenly, her professor, Paul, pulls up and offers her a ride home. In the car, he reminds her that they need to focus on her father's groundbreaking experiment. That night, Wei kneels before her father's altar, promising to make him proud. She hears Angela arguing with her boyfriend Josh in her room. When Angela finds Wei, she shouts at her to stop burning incense and complains about the smell of the food offerings. Wei tells her Aunt Ling allows it, but Angela screams that her mother is never home and slams the door. Wei and Paul begin working on the skin grafting experiment. Wei explains they're missing a key ingredient to bind the skin tissue. Paul, seeing a chance for fame, becomes very focused. As days pass and they make no progress, he becomes increasingly frustrated with Wei. Later, Jasmine visits the lab and signs up to be a lab assistant. On the train ride home, she and Wei bond. Jasmine encourages Wei to take off her scarf, telling her, "The scarf is ugly, not you." Wei is touched by her kindness. She then sees a flyer for a rare corpse flower in bloom. Remembering her father, she realizes it might be the missing ingredient. Wei visits the exhibition and collects a strange jelly-like substance from the flower. Back in the lab, she tests it and watches it flawlessly repair damaged tissue. She has discovered a solution. Soon after, Paul and Eve, who are secretly having an affair, are in the lab when Wei arrives. Eve quickly tries to leave but becomes jealous and takes a compromising photo of Wei and Paul. When Wei excitedly shows Paul the successful experiment, Eve barges back in and invites Wei to a girls' night out. In her haste to leave, Wei forgets her father's diary. Paul picks it up, takes photos of the pages, and sends them to a friend to be translated. Eve sends a compromising photo of Wei and Paul to Angela, making Angela furious. Eve then drives Wei to a remote location, yells at her for sleeping with a professor, and abandons her. Wei eventually makes her way home to find her father's altar destroyed. A fight breaks out between her and Angela, and in the chaos, Angela dies. Desperate, Wei drags Angela's body to the bathroom. Using her special solution, she cuts off Angela's skin and grafts it onto her own face. The process is painful, but when her scars are gone, she's overjoyed. Now she wears Angela's face. When Aunt Ling comes home, she apologizes for her absence and announces she'll be gone for 2 weeks. Wei spends this time studying Angela's videos and practicing her mannerisms. At university, everyone treats her like Angela, and she's no longer subjected to disgusted stares. Angela's boyfriend, Josh, greets her with a kiss, and Wei plays along. She discovers Angela was an athlete and injures her own hand to avoid participating. During a date with Josh, the skin on Wei's face begins to peel away. Horrified, Josh tries to run but falls and dies. Wei rushes home, looking for her father's diary, and tries to call Paul. She doesn't know that Paul's friend just warned him about the dangers of the research and that Paul is now working on it himself. When Paul finally answers, he tells her the research is no longer hers, it belongs to him. Consumed by anger and a sense of betrayal, Wei trashes the lab. She then sees Eve outside and asks her for a ride. During the drive, Eve notices how dry Wei's Angela face looks. Wei realizes the skin graft is failing and decides that Eve will be her next victim. That night, Wei invites Eve over for a sleepover. In the middle of the night, she attacks. Eve runs and jumps into a pond to escape, but Wei hunts her down and kills her. Disguised as Angela, Wei calms a neighbor who complains about the barking dog. Alone, she grafts Eve's skin onto her own face, studying her mannerisms. When police arrive to question Angela about Josh's death, Wei, now disguised as Eve, flirts with them and they leave without suspicion. At school, Wei's tense behavior as Eve makes Jasmine concerned for Angela. As Wei tries to dispose of Eve's body, the nosy neighbor keeps getting in the way. Then, strange messages start arriving from the phones of her victims. To deflect suspicion, Wei emails the compromising photo of her and Paul to the university, and Paul is immediately fired. Determined to get her father's diary back, Wei breaks into Paul's house but can't find it. When Paul arrives, he thinks she's Eve and vents about being fired. Wei feigns sympathy and leaves, but Paul becomes suspicious. Back at his lab, Paul continues to experiment with the corpse flower substance and celebrates a successful breakthrough. He calls Eve to boast about it and invites her over. Wei arrives and notices Paul stashing the vial in a cabinet, seizing the moment she slips it into her bag before making a quick excuse to leave. Later, Paul finds the vial missing and instantly knows she's responsible. The diary, however, is still safe with him. With Eve's skin now deteriorating, Wei removes it. Then Jasmine shows up unexpectedly. Inside, she finds Wei bloodied and wearing Eve's dress. Shaken, Jasmine asks what's going on. Wei admits she only wanted to know what it felt like to be admired, to be famous. Jasmine, concerned, offers a comforting hug and suggests she come over to try some traditional food. But when Jasmine opens the fridge, she freezes. Inside are Eve's dismembered body parts. Before she can react, Wei grabs a sheet of plastic and wraps it tightly over Jasmine's mouth. Jasmine thrashes violently, but Wei holds her down until her body goes limp. Not long after, Paul tracks Wei to her home. He confronts her, mocking that he discovered the corpse flower secret in a single afternoon. While it took her an entire lifetime, Wei remains calm. She tells him the vial is in the fridge. When he leans closer to look, she attacks. This time the act doesn't bring guilt. It fills her with exhilaration. She uses the substance on Paul, watching as his body spirals into uncontrollable tissue growth, just like her father's horrific fate. The commotion draws the neighbor, who barges in, only to be met with Wei's ghastly appearance and Paul's grotesque, writhing form. She flees in terror to call 911. Knowing the police could show up any second, Wei snatches the last vial and bolts. But before she gets far, the officers arrive and give chase. She darts into the underground subway tunnels, where she spots John and pleads for help. Without hesitation, he hides her beneath the blanket draped over his shoulders. When officers arrive asking if he's seen a blonde woman, John deliberately points them in the opposite direction. But in her frantic escape, Wei drops the vial. Flesh, merging her body with John's in a nightmarish fusion. Elsewhere, Ling searches for her niece. She calls out her name, mistaking a stranger for her until she turns and sees the abomination. It's John and Wei grotesquely combined. Ling's face twists in horror as she realizes the truth, the final tragic culmination of Wei's descent into madness. And that's how Wei's desperate quest for beauty spiraled into pure madness. Thanks for watching.